than just the arrangement. But if you don't understand the arrangement, I could sit here and start talking about certain things, and it would totally go over your head because you don't understand the arrangement. For example, if I said Moses is always in the east,
Yam,
always.
Mizrah.
What if I said Benjamin and Joseph is always in the west?
That would be accurate.
Always in the west. Very interesting that when you begin to look at this and think about this, and you begin to think about the history of Israel, the northern tribes were to the north. And Rabbi brought out this thing about Dan. And he just touched on it and moved on. He had told me that he was going to talk about the flags or the standards, which we ran out of time. And he didn't get to talk about the standards. But I will tell you this, is that being an ex-military person, I can tell you that units are always represented by standards or flags. Okay? The oldest record recorded of something being organized under flags is right here in front of you. Okay? Now, what's on the flags is tradition. The Torah of Moses doesn't tell us. It's tradition. It comes from the rabbis. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you where it comes from. Okay? But it's important that we understand this and see this. Okay? Why was the Mishkan laid out the way it was laid out? In the directions that it set. Last week's Torah portion tells us why. Because the sun always rose in the east and set in the west. And in Ezekiel, God is rebuking his people that have been in the temple because they are worshiping east instead of westward. They worship facing the east. Now, why is this a problem? Because in Christianity, you have this service that's held once a year.
Sunrise service.
Sunrise service.
On a Sunday morning.
On a Sunday morning. It is directly connected to the pagan nations. Because sunrise service is the worship of the sun. That's what it is. Not the S-O-N, the S-U-N.
No, the beat. Shemesh.
Yep. So the way the priesthood and the people worshiped God was facing west, where the sun sets. One thing that I want to bring out that as Rabbi was talking about the constellations in the east is different than the constellations in the west. It's just basic knowledge. Because where you stand on the earth depends on where the stars will be. You got to understand when you're studying this, we're studying it from the land of Israel.
Definitely. Time included.
Yeah. And so I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. Why did God create the sun, the moon, and the stars?
For the Moedim.
For the festivals. And he said for signs. But the word used signs there's a multiplicity of meanings behind the word signs. A lot of meaning behind it. And Yeshua rebuked his generation because they sought signs. Okay? So, just bringing all of that up to rehash and give this to you. There is a lot here. And this week's Torah portion, Robinson asked us, why didn't we teach more? And it's like, there's so much to teach, you kind of just got to cherry pick and pick what you want to teach, and then that's it. because there's so much here. Same with this. There's so much here that you kind of got to cherry pick what you want to teach. Parsha Nisan actually is a continuation from last week's study, obviously, which is dealing with the priesthood. So what is Numbers actually teaching us? Years and years and years ago, more than 20 years ago, I decided to try to start studying how God set up his government. And I never could figure it out. No matter how much I studied it, how much I read it, I couldn't understand it. But the more I get into Judaism, the more I understand it. And what we have taking place is literally God setting up his nation in the earth and the way he wants to do things. So when we begin to talk about stuff and it ruffles your feather and you say, well, I've never been taught that, then
You were in the wrong classroom.
the question is this. Just because you haven't been taught it doesn't mean it's not there.
That's right.
Okay? Will we be opening to learning something new? Okay? This right here, where did Moses get the tabernacle from? Where did he get the concept from?
Tavnit.
Where?
The Tavnit.
Okay.
Image that God showed him on the mountain.
It's something that he saw in the heavens. And this year I caught it for the first time because I thought like, well, he kind of probably wrote it down or gave it some way, but no, he had to be intricately involved in the building of the Mishkan because he was the one that saw it. Nobody else saw it. So he pulled down something from heaven. Okay? And what we're having is the organizing of God's government in the earth the way he wants it ran. So when we studied this week's Parsha, and we began to look at it and say, well, that doesn't seem fair. Fair to who?
Right.
Fair to who? When I was in the Christian church, I was with another pastor. We pastored different churches. And he and I had a conversation, and he said something to this day that just strikes a chord with me. He said, if I read something in the Bible, and it is opposite of my viewpoint, then I have to question my viewpoint. Because God's word is truth. My opinion is not the truth.
Is he reading from the Tanakh or is he reading from the English translation?
He was reading from the English translation.
No. Problem number one.
Well, yes and no, but that's where he's at. God's going to meet him where he's at.
Whatever he says, that's it.
Whatever God says is
That's
true,
it.
whether we agree with it or not. So like this week when he's talking, this week there's 3 things in our Torah portion that he talks about. Anybody know what those 3 things are? That defiles a person.
Dead body.
Okay? Under the Nazarite vow is the dead, touching the dead. That defiles a person. What else defiles a person? What we eat. But in this week's Torah portion. In this week's Torah portion.
Something with blood. Blood?
In this week's Torah portion. There are three defilements that he specifically talks about in this week's Torah portion. A woman who commits adultery and the test that is done on that. Okay? The Nazarite vow, which is you're forbidding, in the Nazarite vow, you're forbidden certain things in a certain season, but there's something there that you're never supposed to do, which is touch a dead body. Okay? And approach the tabernacle or the Mishkan. Okay? Remember, this is all in reference to the Mishkan. Okay? Because what has happened, we're still literally studying Leviticus. The first 10 chapters of Numbers is still Leviticus. So, I haven't said the third one yet. Okay? Just leave it blank and I'll come back to
You
it.
said about the adulterous woman, right?
The adulterous woman. Okay? The other thing that it talks about is the very first thing it talks about is we translate it as leprosy. Yeah. So those are the three things it talks about.
I got a question. The Torah says that this is a test for the woman who's caught in adultery, right?
Right.
It just says unfaithful, right?
Right.
Where's the man? Why only just the woman and not the man also?
That's true.
Just like in the Gospels.
I'm just bringing it up, guys, so we can watch it.
No, that's true. Why, they were both doing it.
Well, you got to be caught in the act. That's
What,
for sure.
well, here's the thing. But here's what you don't understand. Here's what you don't understand. For a woman to be accused and found innocent meant death to her husband.
Yeah, but.
No, listen to what I said. For her to be found and accused and to be found innocent, her husband was put to death. So there was grave consequence, not her, him.
So she wasn't.
If she was found not guilty under the test because he brought an accusation against her character, he's dead.
But it wasn't her husband who brought it, it was the Pharisees.
But we're not talking about who. You're tying something else. Daniel tied it to that.
Sorry.
Okay? I'm sticking to here. Okay? In this text, if she's innocent, he's put to death. So, was there a consequence? Yes. But if he's right, she's put to death. So what is the penalty? Yeah. Okay? Any questions on that?
Well, then I think I won.
Yeah. Okay? So, this is what we've got going on. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the layout here, the way some of this is. Because where our Torah portion picks up is also what is being done here, and what Hashem is doing is setting in order. That's what he's doing. Okay? He's setting an order in the earth. And that order is the order of him. Okay? So, we've all read what Peter said, for you are a nation of what? Kings and priests. Poor translation. Poor translation. Doesn't say kings and priests. It says kingly priests.
King priest?
Kingly priests.
Kingly priest.
Kingly priests. It's not two different categories of people. It's basically saying that you are a royal priesthood.
So that's where you get the slave master mentality in this world.
Yes,
In the body.
exactly.
Ooh, that's horrible.
Yes. Terrible translation. The Hebrew actually says that they're kingly priests.
What verse are you using?
The one that, let's see. The one that Peter quoted, it's over in Leviticus. Let's see. I can't look it up right now. But anyway, so where we pick up on this is what he is doing is establishing his rule in the earth. Okay, remember last week or a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the tabernacle, I explained to you that the ark is not his throne. Okay, it's a footstool. Okay, but there's some interesting things about this arrangement that's here that some of you will get, others of you it'll go over your head. I just want to kind of put it out there. I'm not going to go deep into it. I'll let you figure it out. Okay? If it goes over your head, it's okay. All right? When we look at this week's Torah portion, it begins where we left off last week, and it's talking about Gershon. Right? So let's look at Numbers chapter 4, verse 21. And it says, again, and I'm reading from the Tree of Life version. It says, again, Adonai. And so that means if you're reading from like the King James or a different translation, our verses may be a little differently. So if it's thrown off, just let me know and we'll try to get you called up. So here, when it's talking about the priesthood, it's talking about the third son of the priesthood, which is Gershon. All right? And it says to take a census of them and their households, counting the males from 30 to 50. Now there's interesting, because Rabbi brought it out last week, that this counting is actually the third counting that has been done on the children of Israel. And there's a fourth coming in this book. But why does this book have two countings? Want to take a guess?
Oh, because God loves his people. He likes to count things.
That's what Rashi says.
Yeah, I know.
That's what Rashi says. But there's another reason. Because this counting is the people that exited Egypt.
Oh.
The next counting is the people entering the promised land.
So that was the Adut.
So you've got the passing generation and the generation coming. The Exodus and the entrance. So it's two different generations.
So the Adut is the first one and the Kahal was the second one.
Correct.
Okay.
So we've got two countings that's going to take place here. So that's why there is a change in the numbers. Okay? Also, I told you a couple of weeks ago that when it says that the purpose of the Mishkan was so that God could dwell amongst them, it does not mean that the tabernacle is where God dwelled. The way that verse reads is that he dwells inside the builders who build it. That's what it means. So everybody in Israel built the Mishkan, even though we are given the name of two people. Why? Because everybody gave material. So God dwelled in them. That's not a New Testament concept.
Yep.
It's a Levitical concept.
Yep.
It's in Leviticus. It's in the holiness code.
That's Oham, right? I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay? So this idea that the Holy Spirit dwelt in them after Yeshua rose from the dead,
Nope.
no. He dwelt in them before that. When the Mishkan was built, he dwelt in the builders. He dwelt in them. This is the reason after Leviticus, we will see in Numbers that they repeat the same mistakes that they made before, but there's immediate consequence, and they die. Why? Because of God's presence. Ooh, it's quiet. Got to be careful when God's presence is needed. And there are certain things that his presence will not tolerate. He will just leave. In fact,
Say it. Just say it.
I'll get to it later.
Say it now. You're
So-
thinking it. You're thinking
You need
it.
to
I'll bring it up. I promise. No, I won't.
No,
No, I won't. I promise you, I won't forget it.
no.
So last week we were so what is happening in the book of Numbers is we're coming off the holiness. The most important book of Torah is Leviticus, which is the least read book. It is the single most important book. Okay? Then we're coming, so we're up to this apex, and now we're coming off this apex. So we're coming down off the peak of Torah right now. We're coming down off of it. Or you could see it as we're bringing the holiness of God into the earth. That's another way to see it. When he's structuring this, what we are actually seeing is a social, economic explanation of the country. One way to see it. So the pentacle of servitude in Torah is the Levitical priests. And the pentacle of the Levitical priest is the Cohen. And the pentacle of the Cohen is the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. How important is the high priest? Let's just put it like that. Let's just put it like this. Yovel is dependent on the life of the high priest. Yes. Shemitah is dependent on the life of the high priest. The counting deals with the life of the high priest. Notice when they get into the promised land that if a person accidentally kills someone, where do they run to? Have you ever wondered when can they leave the city of refuge? Or are they abandoned there for
When the
rest of
high
their life?
priest dies.
When the high priest dies.
How does that tie to the Yovel? I don't get it.
Because the Yovel is the same way. It's determined by the high priest when he's set in place.
So if the high priest died at year 27 of a Yovel, you get a new Yovel?
No, you don't get a new Yovel. It's not counted like that. You use the priest's life to count on. So they're tied. The life of
They're
the priest
tied, but the
is-
Yovel is still 50 years
Yeah, it's
regardless.
still 50 years. It doesn't reset it, but they're tied.
Well, that's the
yeah, they're
impression
intricately tied. Yeah, let me,
that you gave based on the statement that you made.
thank you for correcting me.
I'm not.
Yeah, no, you're
I'm
right.
just asking a question.
Yeah,
That's just
you're right.
what
It
came
doesn't
across, and I
reset the
doubt it.
Yovel. What it does
What?
is you count everything based off the life of the high priest.
I can live with that, but yeah, the Yovel's still 50.
It's still 50, always 50.
Okay.
So, and that's another way, is that when you talk about, like, over in the Kings, you'll notice, and even the prophets, when you read them, they always give you a year of the king. What year was the king's rule? That's not the way God's government works. God's government works off the priests, not the kings. Okay? So, let me show you something. It says, and again Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, take a census of the sons of Gershon. We're looking at verse 21, 22. By the ancestral households and by their families, count all the males of 30 to 50 years of age, everyone coming to work in the service of the tent of meeting. This is the task of the Gershon families. Okay, here is a basic thing that you should know. What was the task of the Gershons? It's right here.
On the mount, they should bear the curtains.
The curtain, the coverings.
The curtains of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, its coverings, the outer coverings, the curtains for the entrance of the tent of meeting, the curtains surrounding the courtyard, and the altar.
It's all the outside stuff.
And the altar.
The The altar was outside.
Yes.
Therefore, all the outside stuff.
No, because it doesn't say anything about the basin.
You're right. Most of the outside stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, that's better.
Okay? So what was their task? They carried everything, like you said, all the coverings and the altar.
But not the laver.
The laver. It doesn't say the laver.
Huh.
Okay?
Now, you know what's cool is our current word lavatory comes from the laver in
Yeah.
Hebrew. FYI.
So this is what they did. Now, where were the Goshen, looking at your text here, where are they in the tabernacle? In the west, behind it. Okay? Now, I want to pause here and let's turn to the last chapter of this week's Torah portion, which is chapter 7. Chapter 7 actually ties back to Exodus, the last chapter of Exodus. Okay? It says, when Moses finished setting up the tabernacle, he anointed and consecrated it and all its implements, the altar and its utensils, and he anointed and consecrated them. And then the princes of Israel, heads of their ancestral houses, they were tribal princes in charge over those who were numbered, gave offerings. They brought as their gift before Adonai 6 covered carts and 12 oxen. A cart came from every 2 princes, and an ox from each one of them. They presented them before the tabernacle. You see that? Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, accept these from them to use in the service of the tent of meeting. Give them to the Levites to use as each man's work requires. You see this? Said, so Moses took the carts and the oxen and gave them to the Levites. He gave 2 carts of oxen and 4 oxen to Gershon as their work required, and 4 carts and 8 oxen to the sons of Merari as their work required, under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron the Cohen. But the sons of Cohen, he did not give any, because their responsibility was carrying the holy items on their shoulders. You see that? So what was the responsibility of the Kohath clans? Turn to Numbers chapter 3, verse 31. We can actually start at 30. The prince of the ancestral household of the Korahites was Ilphan, son of Uriel. They were responsible for what? The ark, the table, the menorah, the altars, and the implements of the sanctuary used in service with them, the curtain, and all involved in its use. You will always see drawings, and in the movies you will see that when they are moving, that the ark is exposed to the sunlight. It was never exposed to the sunlight. They wrapped it in the curtain when they moved.
She's asking why.
Why?
I don't know. It's what God commanded them to do. Now, if you really want to know that question, start digging and tell me.
That's a nice cop out.
Okay?
I have a.
You brought it up, so you should have the answer.
No, I don't have an answer. I'm just bringing out what the Torah says.
Sometimes.
I have.
Maybe
I
not
have
this
a.
time.
You got an idea
I
behind
have
it?
an idea behind it, and the reason being that I think that this is what it is The Ark of the Covenant was laid in gold outside and inside.
3 boxes, right?
Okay, they were laying gold. So, when they were tearing it down, the common Hebrew could not see the ark. If he did see it, he would die.
Yes.
So the covering was
Some
done.
protection.
Well, it was a protection, first of all, for the common people, and also it was a protection that God was very jealous. He is a jealous God.
Yes.
But the covering that went to cover it was more than one material.
Yeah.
Okay? That you need to understand. Now I have a question for you because I gave you that information. What color was the color of the covering that was used for the tabernacle? And then what was the color of the exterior covering that covered the cover of the Ark of the Covenant? There were 2 covers.
There were multiple covers.
I'm just giving you 2. There are multiple. I'm just giving you 2 very important ones because one of them was from an animal that lived in that time frame, and they used his skin of this animal. And once they got all the skin in there for the coverings, that animal became extinct.
That's a midrash on that colors.
That animal became
Extinct.
His whole purpose was to provide the pelts for the tabernacle. And that's it. That's the midrash. So, when we look at this, okay,
Some of the Jewish writings.
okay, when we look at this, we can see who, now, why is this important? You need to understand this because as we get later in and you start seeing how people are acting, the question is do you not understand your role? Because your role is important. This is what Paul was talking about when he said the body of Christ. That's what this is. This is the body of God. Every part has its role. This is one concept. There are multiple. This is one. So not only is it a government, it's a military force. Not only is it a military force, it's the body of God. Okay? So we need to understand what are the roles of these guys. What did they do? If we look at 3, the same chapter, chapter 3, verse 36 and 37. It says, the sons of Merari were appointed over the care of the frames of the tabernacle, its crossbars, posts, bases, and all the equipment for its use. The posts of the surrounding courtyard, their bases, pegs, and ropes. So, what was it that the Merari carried? They carried the structure.
How many? How many were involved in that family? Come on. I gave you that information weeks ago.
You see? They carried the structure. How many was in this census? That's what Rabbi's asking, right? It took 6,200 men to do this service. 6,200 men.
And that's all they did.
That's it. They carried and put it up.
Tear it down, bury it, and put it up. That's it.
That's why they were given carts. Because it wasn't their role to carry the planks on their shoulders. The only thing that was carried on the shoulders were the furnishings. Okay? And who carried the furnishings? I just told you.
Can I do a sidetrack a little bit?
No. Let me finish what I'm saying. Then I'll let you sidetrack, okay? Look at that face. Let me finish this thought and then you can sidetrack it. Gershon, chapter 3, verse 25 and 26. The duties of the sons of Gershon in the tent of meeting were in the tabernacle. The tent, its coverings, the curtain of the entrance of the tent of meeting, the curtains of the courtyard, the screen of the entrance of the courtyard around the tabernacle, and altar, its ropes, and all related to its use. So we have one that carries the frames, one that carries the coverings, and one that carries the furniture. And then in the front of it, to the east, is those who serve B'nai Israel in the tabernacle, which is Moses and Aaron. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you forgot to mention how much ox power is required to pull each of those carts.
Is that what your sidebar
No,
was?
but it's along that path.
Yes.
The Hebrew word is egel for the carts,
Okay.
and the same word egel is used for the golden calf. I do not understand that one at all. Rabbi, any idea?
Nope.
I can't.
Well, when you can take that a step further. When the ark was taken, how was it brought back?
Well, one time they put on a cart and they dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah.
Then they carried it after.
No. You're thinking of David. David put it on the cart to bring it back in. But there was one time that there was a nation that took the ark in war.
Yeah, the
and when they
Philistines.
they returned it on a cart pulled by oxen. So there's a multiplicity.
But they weren't the pagans weren't instructed how to handle the cart.
Exactly.
We were. They were not.
They were not. And that's why when David did it, it was as if he did something that the pagans had done.
Well, that's kind of like Jacob in Israel, you know. I mean, sometimes we're Jacob, sometimes we're Israel.
Yeah.
You know,
So what we have here, what you need to understand is the roles of these guys, where they are in all of this. Because as we begin to get further into this, you're going to begin to see, okay, this was his responsibility, but this wasn't the responsibility he wanted. He wanted something other.
Is the dog rooms?
Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Now, I put on here almost everything that Rabbi put up. But what I did is I designed this so that as we are talking about this stuff, you can just take notes on this and have notes about all of this. Here's something that's very interesting. There is a gentleman right now who has been doing this study on the book, on the Torah, and how its natural layout was pre-verse chapter. Okay, pre-verse and chapter. He calls it the woven Torah. And the book of Numbers in the woven Torah is laid out just like this.
On the Torah scroll?
No, the words themselves. Not how it's laid out in a Torah scroll written straight, but by the interconnections of words.
Numerics or
No, connections of words.
do we have a diagram of
Phrases.
this?
I do. I'll
And,
show it to
and
you.
we didn't get a copy of
I
it?
did not give you a copy.
Oh my God. Withholding
I've been
information.
studying it for 2 years and I still don't understand it. I can look at it and I can see it, but to be able to explain it to you and how it functions, I can't. Another thing that's interesting is that the book of Leviticus is set up like the Mishkan. Very interesting. Very, very interesting.
So it's kind of like a needlepoint thing or something?
He uses words and phrases to tie it together. This ties with this ties with this ties with this. We're using the Hebrew.
Gematria? I mean,
No, he uses words and phrases. Not gematria.
I understand, but how do you, every time you have the same word in the sentence, they tie together, or?
Yes, because literary wise, the way it's structured is how it's set up. Like, words and phrases are used as paragraphs instead of the pays and the sonnets that you were just talking about. because the pays and sonics
Are stopping points.
is stopping points, which was added to the text. Take all of that out, and all you got is words. Very interesting. But anyway, just food for thought.
Another form of Bible code is what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Okay. More mysteries that we
Okay,
gotta ponder.
let me finish this. On here, I put 4 blocks in dashes. You see those 4 blocks? What tribes are they? What tribes are they, guys? Come on, just look at you. I gave you 4 tribes that has block. It has a dashed block around their name. Who is it? Come on, guys, it's not hard.
Oh,
Judah,
Judah.
Reuben,
Dan.
Ephraim, and Dan. You see that? That's because the Torah tells us that when they began to move, okay, when they began to move, they moved under the banner of that particular tribe. Torah tells us this. Okay? In fact, the east is connected to Judah, the south is connected to Reuben, the west is connected to Ephraim, and the north is connected to Dan. All right? Now, the way the text reads, it says that first was Judah, then Reuben moved with the Korahites. Gershon was third, Ephraim was third, and the last one was Dan. Okay? But they moved under the banners of each of these tribes. Okay? Now, by tradition, what is on the banner of Judah?
Lion.
Lion. Okay? By tradition,
Ari.
what is on the banner of Reuben? A man. A man. With mandrakes.
Huh?
With mandrakes. By tradition, who is on Ephraim's?
Oh, fruit. No?
An ox.
Ox?
Ox.
An elephant.
On Dan,
Snake.
there is a problem with that. Everybody talks about a serpent, but in the ancient world, it could be one of 3 creatures that was on there. Scorpio was always tied with 3 creatures. A scorpion, a snake, and an eagle. Okay? In fact, Ramban says that it was an eagle on there, not a serpent. And the eagle that he describes is an eagle carrying a serpent. So the serpent is on there, but it is destroyed by the eagle carrying it. This is what Ramban says.
Oh, like the Mexican flag?
Almost, yeah. Now, I want to ask you something. For those that know, what was in the Merkaba?
Let's not go down that road, bro. The Merkaba.
So the question is how did they move? Did they move like a Merkaba? Only in straight lines? It's an idea. This is the Merkaba on the earth.
Look at the secret. Merkaba said, look at the secret.
I told you if you didn't get it, just let it go. Don't worry about it. But this is God in the earth. So what did Moses see? Mark it up. It's the first couple of chapters. The wheel within the wheel in Ezekiel in our translation is what I'm talking about. But my point is that when we look at all of this stuff, okay, guys, when we look at all of this, we got to look at the basic stuff that I just shared with you and look at the deep thing that I just shared with you. It's okay if you're confused.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just know that you need to understand the basics. It's the most important thing. Understand the basics. Why are they here? Why did they march under these banners? Okay? So when we continue to look at this, there were 6,200 Mari that carried the frames and the support structures, 7,500 Gershons that carried the tents, and 8,600 Korahites that carried the furnitures. Notice where they are. They're in close proximity to the tabernacle. They're right there beside it. So, I just want to draw a correlation to you. Where does judgment begin, according to Paul?
In the house of Adonai.
Adonai. So who is the closest to him? The high priest.
Ooh, that's an interesting take. Wow. That's cool.
Who's on the periphery of that? These tribes. Who's on the periphery of that? The tribes of Israel. So they're all in close proximity, some just close. And Rabbi gave us the distances last week of how far the tribes were set up away from them.
You guys remember?
Here's something that's interesting. The gifts that they gave, each one gave the exact same amount, each tribe. Boring reading, great study. Boring reading, great study. Because they gave, and here's the thing that's really interesting to me. It may mean nothing to you, but this is the most ancient document that is an accounting document in the world today. Because that's what the gifts were. It was a system of accounting. And it can be laid out and seen in a spreadsheet just the way they would have laid it out. Not the way we have it, the way they would have wrote it. Or the way we have it in the Torah scroll today, it just reads in a linear form. Who's to say that the original document was laid out in a literal, linear form? Just food for thought. Yes. And these gifts were given to maintain the tabernacle. So there was flour that was given. And there's a whole teaching because of the minhag. The most important prayer that we can pray today is the minhag. The evening prayers. Okay? Any questions on this? Don't everybody jump up at one time and ask all these questions, because they'll just,
You want to
Well, it's a heat problem at
It's
the
like
moment.
me.
yeah.
Turn off the lights. No, it's too.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that would help. Actually, why did you, somebody should have come up with that sooner. Hit one of them at least, yeah.
That's fine.
Leslie.
So, I want you guys to learn this, because there is a lot to this. Because what you're talking about is the very holiness of God when you're talking about this. Why don't we study? We say we want to be holy.
So,
Study the holy thing.
let's break it down a little bit.
Okay.
The people received and gathered a bunch of stuff that they could probably never use up in their lifetime anyway.
Mhm.
So they gave a big portion of that and to build the tabernacle and accessories.
Mhm. Now, the first one that is given, because this is the second one that's given for the tabernacle. The first one was a free will offering. Whatever people wanted to bring, they could bring. So that's why everybody was involved with the Mishkan. But this offering, this gift, was commanded from the leadership. It took them 12 days to bring it. One tribe each day. It took them 12 straight days. And it doesn't say that on Shabbat that he didn't receive it. In fact, it doesn't even say that they stopped on Shabbat. There may be something in the Midrash or in some of the other writings, but in Torah, it gives the idea it was 12 straight days they brought it.
So only one Shabbat was
But here's the thing that's interesting. Look at this.
possibly two.
Possibly two. Here's the thing that's interesting. When it starts, the first person to give it is Yehuda. The second one, Issachar. The third one, Zebulun. The fourth one, Reuben. The fifth one, Simeon. The sixth one, Gad. The seventh one, Ephraim. Play with that, Daniel. Judah's first, Ephraim seventh. 1 and 7. Manasseh is 8. Benjamin 9. Dan 10. Asher 11. And Naphtali was the 12th to bring. So why am I bringing that up? Because it actually follows the encampment.
It should have been 1, 4.
Yeah, 1, 4, 7. 1,
No, 8.
1.
4.
So Yehuda's 1.
Yeah.
Reuben's
Then
4. 7 is Ephraim. 8, 9, 10 is Dan.
And then 10, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
He's counting the tribe.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the tribes and counting them down. Just the way it's organized here. The way you see it here is the way they present it. Yehuda, Issachar, Zebulun, Reuben, Gad. So it had nothing to do with birth order. It had everything to do with the arrangements.
Well, that can also be after Reuben blew it that, you know.
No, because we're talking about the tribes. We're not talking about the men.
I understand, but that is a result of Reuben's mess up, I would assume.
No.
No. No. Because now we're talking about tribal leaders. I know what you're saying. I always drew that correlation too. But the blessing that
I'm not. I don't feel so alone now.
yeah, you have two blessings. You have, or some call them curses. You have the one that Yaakov did on his children, and then you have the one that Moshe does on the tribes. And sometimes if you compare them, they're polar opposites. If you compare them. Because I tried to draw that correlation for years. Years. But the key is that when you're dealing with the tribes, it's this order. It's always this order. Starting with Yehuda. I'm at 5%. Is anybody on? Okay. We can go ahead and cut it off. Is there any question on this? This is important to understand. To unlock this book, you've got to understand these tribes. Why?
We're waiting for you to bring up that thing that you passed over.
That's right.
Oh, I did bring it up.
Oh.
It was about the Mishkan. I mean about the Archelaus.
Oh, the Merkabah.
Yeah. I told you I wouldn't forget it. That's what it was.
Cool, thanks.
Okay.
Okay? So here's the thing. I got you. No, they're talking about this. Y'all understand this chart?
Yes.
You understand it? You got a question, Chewy, about it? Ruth, you got a question about the chart?
Well, is that, you went too fast for the gifts, the gift offerings about the tribes?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get the numbers to. I know you said Judah was one.
Yeah,
1,
so
4,
if
7,
you
and
just
10.
count it down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you go to the chapter, it's exactly the same. It follows this pattern.
Oh, so those were the number for the gifts?
Yes,
I thought
yes.
that you said different numbers for different
No, no,
tribes.
no, no. They all gave exactly the same.
Mhm.
So in the first offering that was given for the building of the Mishkan, it was a free will offering. Now, this is where I threw you off.
Yes.
This is in Leviticus.
Okay, that's where.
Okay?
Okay.
This is the second offering taken for the Mishkan.
Okay.
Okay? But this offering follows the outline of the tribes.
Yes, okay.
Why? Because God is setting up a structure of a tribal thing. And I wanted to really bring this up, is that even though we live in a society that has big government, big organizations, and everything in it, isn't it amazing that all those organizations always harken back to being a tribe or a family when they want to try to keep you in? Why? Because no matter how big something gets, people always want to belong to something. And tribes is what we call those things. This is a tribe, whether you realize it or not. Now, tribes are essential for interpersonal connections, but it is a terrible way to govern a nation. Because that's exactly what's happening in the book of Judges, is that you have tribal leaders, and each leader is a king unto its own tribe, and even the Jews the tribes fought amongst themselves. And they knew that the only way that they could stop that was to create a central person, kingship. Kingship. Now, I've always been taught that God never wanted them to have a king. It's not true. No. No. Later we will see that God will say, and when you have a king, it was always ordained for them to have a king. The rabbis say that when they asked for the king, the reason that it upset God was because it was the wrong time to have a king. It wasn't the appropriate time yet. But the tribal leaders knew that they needed one central leader. They just picked the wrong leader. They picked the guy from the north, from the tribe of Dan, because he was tall, dark, and handsome. Saul comes from the tribe of Dan.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
The Apostle Paul comes from the tribe of Dan.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
That's interesting.
If you understand this, it unlocks a lot of other stuff.
So what do you think of Rico Cortez and all his work on the tabernacle?
You know what? I've seen some of it, but not a lot of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I've seen some of it.
It doesn't really grab my attention.
No. It does.
I mean, I love construction, but it's like, just...
Sometimes people get over technical with, well, this represents this and this represents this. Sometimes just backing off of it and seeing the big picture is a more beautiful picture.
I've seen this 100 times. I mean, I'm just saying it just doesn't really do a whole heck of a lot to me at this point,
Yeah.
or in the past 17 or even 40 years as we studied this book.
But that's why I wanted to bring it up, because until today, I did not draw the connection to the murder. Until today. And the rabbis teach this. This is not something I made up. The rabbis teach this. And there's two rabbis at the forefront of it. Ramban.
So, are there 12 points on the Merkabah once it's actually built?
That's a good
That's a
question.
good question, Daniel. That's a mystery. Never saw it.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Because if you got 6 on the deal, then you sit there and just kind of do the thing. I'd have to sit there and have one to sit there and really count it and
Yeah.
not get lost.
But see, this is why you have, again, think about this. Think about this principle. When you start thinking about what is above,
No, that's a no-brainer, yeah.
I know, but if the Merkava is above, there has to be a representation in the earth. What's above?
So 100, you got 100 and, no, it's 60 degrees on each point on the Magen David.
There's a lot to it. But, like I said, until you understand the basics, that won't make sense. And it's okay if it went over your head. That's okay. I wanted to show you that the basic would take you to something really, really, really deep.
Like a nap?
Like a what?
A nap?
A nap? Yeah, I saw you napping, Daniel.
So
Okay?
you already went to the deep end, my brother.
Hey, bro, I tell you.
I mean, just look at this. Just real quick. Look at the mothers. Look at the mothers. Who was Yehuda's mother? Leah. Issachar's mother? Leah. Zubalin's mother? Leah. So everybody to the east is the descendants of Leah. To the south, who is it? Leah. Reuben is Leah's. Simeon is Leah's. Gad is Zilpha's, which is Leah's handmaid. So the east
Now that makes,
and the south
might help.
belongs to Leah. The west, that's all Rachel. The north is mixed because it is Bilhah and Zilpah. It's the handmaidens, which is still Rachel's and Leah's. So the north is mixed.
Excuse me, there's a garage there that they were all half sisters.
Yes.
Same father, different mother. They were half sisters. Her handmaids, Rachel and Leah, were half sisters.
So Leah was the most hated, but she took up the most real estate. Think about that. She was the least loved, but she took up the most real estate.
you see that every day nowadays anyway.
But look,
Nice.
but
Still
also
happens.
look at who they were blessed to have as their Levitical leadership. They had the top people in their leadership. Moses and Aaron and the Kohathites, all on Leah's side. The Levites themselves came from Leah. Think about it. A lot of stuff. That's what I'm saying. When you start playing with this and start filling it in,
Yeah, but that detail right there is always, it wasn't even, it's never presented.
no,
That, I think, is where you can start tying a lot of things in,
you can't.
off of the
And you got the
matriarchies and
directions.
the patriarchies.
Oh yeah, you got the patriarchs too tied into this too.
Well, I'm sure.
Because the patriarchs were the first Merkava. Anyway,
The wheel within the wheel,
they're the first Merkava.
like the shepherds within the 7 shepherds of Israel. It's a wheel within a wheel. And each one has its own characteristics, just like a matriarch's. A wheel within a wheel.
So last week, this will be the last thing I'll do right here, if it's okay with you, Rabbi. Last week, when Rabbi was doing this, we did not have the Hebrew calendar months, and I looked that up. So I want to give you the Hebrew calendar months as they are associated with each tribe.
Oh, that's beautiful teaching.
Okay?
Like that?
Yeah, I'm going to give it to you right now.
So ready, honey?
Okay? So you can write on this page, it's your page, okay? So Yehuda, he's connected to Nisan. Nisan.
Son.
N-I-S-I-A-N. Okay?
Spell it again.
N-I-S-I-N-A. In fact, Beth, you want to come and erase this and put it in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nisana?
That's just the reality.
It's not Nisana.
Well,
Just Nisan.
N-I-S-I-N.
But no H. No
I didn't say
H. H-A, no.
H.
Just Nisan.
Okay, it's all right. Okay, hurry. So we can get this done. This will close it out. Judah. Who's right, Judah? Who's in the song? F-I-S. I-E. Here's your card. I-S. I-R. I-Y-A-R. I-Y-A-R. And Zubulun.
A year.
Z-E-B. U-L-O-N. Savant. S-I-V-A-N. A-N. Reuben. R-E-U. Is Tammuz. T-A-M-M-U-Z.
Coming around to it pretty soon.
Getting close, yeah.
Getting close.
Shimeon.
It's amazing how quickly we've gone through civil.
M-E-O-N. Ah. A-V. Gad. Elul. E-L-U-L. Ephraim. E-P-H. R-A-I-M. Is Tishri. T-I-S-H-R-I. Very good. Manasseh. M-A-N-N-A-S-E-H. Hashvan. C-H-E-S-H-V-A-N. Benjamin. M-I-N. And that is Kislev. K-I-S-L-E-V. Dan. Tevet. T-E-V-E-T. Asher. Shevet. S-H-E-V-E-T. And Naphtali. N-A-P-H-T-A-L-I. Yes. That is a gar. There you go. So we're going to be going off the Gargarian because we didn't have this with us last week. So I thought I'd just give it to you this week. So Daniel, what I was pointing out is that 1 and 7, 1 in 7, the beginnings, and the ends, Yehuda, Ephraim.
Oh, because of the way that is.
For those that are interested, Yehuda's is the king of the months. It's representative of nature and divine supremacy. Reuben is harsh judgment. And it has two faces of honor. Tishri is Rosh Hashanah, so it's the reversal of sin. And Dan, Tevet, is, oh, this one you'll love. Tevet is Hanukkah.
Yay, my favorite!
And the good and evil eye.
For Benjamin.
For
Yes.
Dan.
Well,
Dan is in Tibet. Tibet is,
yeah, but Hanukkah is in Kislev.
but Tibet is connected to Dan.
Well, I got that part.
Okay, but Hanukkah is not a holiday time. It's
Fine.
dedication, memory.
I mean, it goes into Tibet,
Yes.
just a hair.
Yeah. But it has both the evil eye and the good eye. which is interesting since his symbol could be both a serpent and an eagle. Any questions on this?
You okay?
Fine.
You a 10-minute nap or a 15-minute nap?
He already took it.
Yeah, just,
He took like a 3-minute nap.
less.
Okay? So, there you go, guys. I told Rabbi I'd teach the rest of the chapter, and I think I kind of summed it up real well. Or the parsha.
Are we done for the video's sake?
Yes. We're done. Stick a fork in it. Rabbi, anything you want